Welcome to the String Theory of the Unexplained. My name is John Ventry. I'm the host of the show. Our co-host is Fred Saluga. And today we're going to look at the language of angels. We're going to look at the book of Enoch, Enochian. And I had heard about this guy, John Dee. D-E-E. And so again, I decided, let me look into it. I bought this book, the Enochian Dictionary, and it's all about John Dee and his manuscripts of having the language of angels transcribed. And so it gives us the actual language. And actually in here, if you go in here, it's all in there. That's their language, right? It's all in there. So let's take a look at this, the language of angels. You can think about it, Fred, you don't really go, it's like, okay, Adam and Eve, what language did they speak? When they talked to God, was it just mental, or what language did they speak? Right away we think, oh, they must be speaking English. Well, English wasn't around back then. I never thought about that. What language do they speak? They obviously had a language, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is the language.
But then again, okay, so they had a language. So God made Adam and Eve. How many other people was around at that time? Did they also?
According to, well, no, it was only them two, and maybe Lilith, because we did a show on Lilith.
But I mean, God had to have a road dog. I mean,
that was his angels. God. That was his angels. I mean, he had all his angels, and then he created us. Well, he did it all in the same day.
Did the angels talk?
Day 6. Well, yeah, they spoke the same language. And this language is passed on. God taught Adam the language. And then what they say is that the archangels, a couple of them, I'll talk about that, Raphael and Uriel and some of them, were the ones that gave man this language. Or no, Enoch. Enoch went up to heaven, and he was allowed to transcribe, write it down, and he brought it back in the book of Enoch. And that's really the book of Enoch, where you get the watchers and the fallen angels and all of that. So here's a couple of quotes. Spirits are real. Spirits are imaginary. Most can't imagine how real their imaginations are. So that was a rabbi had said that, because spirits are real. Here's another one I came across. Until today, no one heard the devil's side of the story because God wrote all the books. Well, that's true. The Bible, all the older books, are all written religious, right? So that was said by a progressive, because a lot of what you see coming out today from the progressives is definitely from the devil's side. It's not from God's side. It's as anti-God as you can be, right? So this story here is the angel Raphael giving this information to John Dee through Edward Kelly. He's a scryer. A scryer is a seer or a medium, let's say. And this takes place from 1581 to 1588. Interesting thing is that John Dee, he doesn't ever publish his book. It's almost 100 years later, almost 80 years later, it's first published by somebody else, and I'll get into that. And then another 90 years, almost 100 years later, it's purchased by the British Museum in 1753, and they paid £20,000, which is like, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 for the book. Wow. That's what they paid for this one manuscript. They thought it was that important.
Money back then.
Oh, big time, yeah. But they thought it was that important. I tell you, I've come across in my readings in the last couple of books of stuff that's at the British Museum, and I've been there I've been to London a couple of times. I worked out of London for a month. I have never been to the British Museum. I have to go specifically to spend a couple of days in the British Museum. There's a couple of things we're going to talk about here, and they actually have it. This book, and there's something else in this presentation, it's at the British Museum. It actually tells you what room number to go to see it, So that's one of the places. I've been to London, but I didn't go there, which is strange, because I go to all the museums. So the language of Enochian is a bridge between the world of spirits, angels, and demons. It was a language that was taught to Enoch when he went up to heaven, and he recorded it in 3 books. And some say, like he said in here, some people say that those books were lost in the Great Flood, and then they were found later, that Solomon actually found the books. And then others say that no, Enoch, what he did, he gave the books to Noah to take on the ark, is what happened. But no matter what, we only got 2 books. We don't have 3. So there's a lost book of Enoch, is what they say. Another interesting thing I was reading in the book was that St. Augustine said that Seth's children, right? Seth, there was Cain and Abel,
Yeah.
right? Cain's kids were all daughters and they were bad. Seth's kids were all boys and they're good. Because back then, that's how they looked at. They looked at women as being evil, you know, and all evil comes from females, you know, and the men were always good and righteous, although we killed everybody, you know. We seemed to go to war all the time, and I got my Templar shirt on. That's what we were good at. Nobody makes war like us, like the Brits and the Vikings and the Romans, you know. But yeah, just another thing that was in there. So I would say though, if you want to learn about this, Fred, and this stuff creeps me out. Because I know what I'm looking at in here, when I'm seeing all of these images and hieroglyphs and stuff, and words that they mean something. They don't mean anything to me.
Mhm.
I think this stuff is very demonic is what it is, and I'll prove that to you. But this stuff creeps me out. And I would say if you want to read about this, do not go to Aleister Crowley's, you know, Golden Dawn, and we'll get into that. He took this, if this is the language, and then turned it into spells and incantations and rituals and stuff and made it into a very demonic thing. And it may have always been that way, and we may not be getting this from angels. We may be getting this from Satan, you know. But I would say look to grimoires and some of this older stuff, like the Book of Enoch, and don't go to the demonic groups like Aleister Crowley. So here's a grimoire. The first one that was ever published was by a pope, Pope Honorius in 1221. The other thing is, you know, you get off the ark, right, and Ham, who's the second son of Noah, he's got a book of magic. Where did he get a book of magic from? That had to come from the devil, right, from Satan. So he has a book of magic. He's the second son of Noah that gets off of the ark. And then what you read is that he's banished to Africa, and that's where all the voodoo and that type of stuff comes from. But a grimoire is basically a book of spells and black magic is what it is. But I think you can read about that without practicing it. I don't like stuff that's in a foreign language. I don't really know what it says. And I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to think it. And you're bringing something in. That's what's happening. So in 525 BC in Iran, Zoroaster, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Giorgio has mentioned him on Ancient Aliens. I don't watch it either anymore. But you know, Giorgio is half Iranian. He's half Greek, half Iranian, is what he is. So he knows Iran, and he brings up Zoroaster. But he made this quote: "Uncreated God," so God was not created. He's always been there. "Created the world good. He gave man free will and a soul, and the righteous dead will be resurrected." That's similar to what's in the Bible, right? That's very similar, right? Moses recorded the Old Testament, Genesis, in 1445 BC. So that's 900 years before the Zoroaster guy. The Library of Alexandria contains 700,000 books and records. 700,000. And the Romans went in there and they burnt it all down. What a shame. All of that knowledge of the old world, and the Romans went in and destroyed it. And we did the same thing with the Mayans. The Spanish, when they went down to South America, the Mayans, Popol Vuh, that's their records, destroyed them all.
But you do
mostly.
that. You do that so they don't have records.
Yeah, that's how you destroy a culture.
To the winner goes the victor.
That's right.
You know?
And that's how you destroy cultures.
Yeah,
You destroy their history
Right.
and everything else, right? You take the women, now
That's what they're doing right now. They're destroying the history in our country.
yeah, well, isn't that what they're trying to
That's
do?
what they're doing.
You
They're
want to
taking
take
down
away the
statues.
history.
Yeah, they're taking, you know, this, George Washington, the father of the country, they've taken his statues
Yeah,
down
yeah.
because he had a slave. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, come on.
Well, you notice they didn't mess with Lincoln, although there was a picture on where they destroyed the
trying
statue of
to.
Lincoln. But
They're
yeah, they
trying
would
to.
like to.
Yeah.
And that goes hand in hand, because that's what you do. You destroy a country by taking their culture away, right? So here's something else interesting. You know, like let's say in Genesis,
Yeah.
there's no talk of angels. The first angel is not mentioned until 700 BC in the book of Tobit. Right? So when Moses is writing all of his stuff down, he's not talking about angels in there. I got to go back and verify that, because
Okay.
I think he did talk about that in Genesis,
I don't think
that God created angels, right?
But there was no angels around.
I don't know,
If you
but that's
look
what
at,
this
if you look
says.
at the movie, there was no angels in that movie.
I'd have to go back and research that one,
No,
because
no angels,
I
no.
think, well, doesn't it talk about God on the sixth day he created angels, and he created man was last? I'm pretty
The
sure
angels
that's
stayed
what it
up in
says.
heaven. They didn't come down here.
Oh, yeah, but he's saying there was no discussion of angels until 700 BC. But actually, that was a different book I read, it's not in this one. So then I come across the Testament of Solomon, which is a book I ordered, where Satan says that he was the highest ranking angel. He left, when the watchers mated with women, he went to Venus, and that he must leave in the presence of God's name. And we know that from exorcisms and hauntings and that type of stuff, right? So let's talk about this guy, John Dee. So John Dee is born in 1527 to 1608. He lives 81 years. He's a Cambridge graduate. He tries to build a library in London. He actually purchases with his own money 2,500 books to build England's library. He experienced odd dreams and strange knockings at night. Fred, I still get these knockings and these sounds, and then I call out prayers and they leave. So the stuff that he had, I still have that occasionally, you know. He used a mirror to contact angels. Now they say...
Well, there's a lot to that.
Yeah, tell
That is a gateway. That is a gateway to the spirit world.
Yeah.
We had a thing we did, me and Danny Miller, where we called on my uncle's mother, and she actually, through EVP, talked to us. She said her husband was in I don't know what you call it back in the olden days, and we said, "That's your son," and she said, "That's my son." So, I mean, they say that's the gateway to the spirit world.
And that you can actually catch
Yeah.
a soul or
Yeah.
a demon
Yeah.
can get stuck in a mirror, right? If you cover it, right
Yeah,
away,
yeah,
that you
yeah.
can. But what are you drinking here? What is this?
Oh, this is black cherry pop.
Ah,
I may just quit drinking beer. This is so damn
So
good,
that's
man.
it.
I
It
like
is
this.
good,
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
it?
Just a second.
I mean, black
second
cherry.
bottle, black cherry pop, man.
I drink black cherry, one bottle every day at lunchtime, and yeah. So Fred, now you heard it. He's no longer drinking beer. He's drinking black cherry soda. Is what he's drinking. See, I'm from New York. It's soda. Here it's
Yeah.
pop.
Pop, yeah.
Yeah. So so he also is Queen Elizabeth I's astrologer and mathematician. He created a navigational system to find the New World. So the guy's not an idiot. The guy's pretty smart,
Well,
right?
but see again, okay, so we did astrologer and mathematician. Where did the math come from? Who developed math?
Math
who
came out of
developed astrology? I mean,
well, you know, most of that, I would say, the math I know came out of the Arabs. You know, the Egyptians and the Arabs who created math. The astrology seems to have been in every culture where they tracked the stars and all of that. All the cultures did that because that's how they navigated. That's how they did things, was by looking at where the star was. They knew where they were. That was the only way you had to get around, you know. So he's the advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He tells Queen Elizabeth not to marry her boyfriend, her beau, that he would die violently. A year later, he dies. So he got that right, you know. So she protects John Dee.
yeah.
They wanted to burn him at the stake for this stuff, but she always protected him as her advisor, right? All he wanted was secret knowledge. That's what he wanted. He had an old book called the Book of Soiga, but he couldn't decipher it. You needed the cipher. You needed the key word to explain what it all was. So he was very frustrated with that. And the Book of Soiga is very old, right? So it has 36 of these tablets in there, and he can't figure out what you need a key word to figure it out. He couldn't figure it out, right? And all of this stuff really is what was revealed to Adam by God in Eden. Is what this is, the language, and I already mentioned that. So Edward Kelly is the guy that assists him. He's 30 years older, almost 30 years older. So he's an Oxford graduate. He's a medium. He's a scryer or a seer, what we call a medium, right? He's an alchemist. he also possessed some very old books like that book of Soiga, you know,
Right,
some very old books, 1,000-year-old books, right? So he works with John Dee for 7 years to develop this, right? So back then, in that time period, the 1500s there, the 16th century, Krakow, Antwerp, Prague was the centers of magic in Europe. That's where all of this stuff was being looked at. We're in those countries right there, Germany, Austria, you know, those areas, right? Rabbi Lowe, if you ever heard of the Golem, there was a movie, The Golem. He conjures up the Golem in 1581 in Prague, okay? So it all goes back to that time period. They throw Dee in prison for 3 months in 1555 for magic, practicing magic, and talking heresy. So he spends 3 years in prison, but the Queen, either that was before he was with the Queen, maybe, let's say. Dee really just wanted to converse with the angels, like Enoch, Moses, Abraham. He wanted that same ability to understand and communicate with them. He wasn't looking for money or anything like that. He just wanted to contact the spirit world, right? So Dee meets Kelly in 1581, and they use a grimoire, a wax table with a pentagram and crystals and stones, right? So supposedly, and this is all going through Kelly, Uriel tells Dee, through Kelly, to engrave a wax table with a hexagram. Do you think an archangel would tell you to use a Ouija board or a hexagram or something like that?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, but back then they may have. We don't know what they were thinking back then.
Unless they didn't view it as
we do
demonic
today,
as
yeah,
we do,
yeah.
you know. But that's what he was told to create this hexagram. So Dee uses a crystal ball, a black mirror that he put on the table, right? That on this table, right? So here's the wax table, Fred. It's a wax table with this hexagram. It's called the Sigillum Emeth. This is at the British Museum also, with his original manuscripts. So when I go to London, I'm going to go. I want to see these things. This is the table they used to contact the angels and get all of this knowledge. Okay. They start these angelic conversations in 1582, March of 1582, through Kelly. Dee doesn't hear anything. So everything he's told, Kelly is telling him that he's in contact, like a medium. He's in contact with the spirit world, and he's telling them, right? So what happens is Kelly is saying it, and Dee is recording it, right? And what you're getting are these, if you look at the bottom here, these letters, they're in squares, right? And they're arranged in squares. You can read this in any direction, corner to corner, backwards, top, bottom. It's cryptogram.
Right.
So you can read it in any direction if you can make out what it means, you know? They look at it and they say, well, this isn't Hebrew, it's not Egyptian, it's not Sumerian. He's got 98 of these squares that he draws, very complex. And each square contains one word, like this whole page he's got. He's got 98 pages with one word that makes any sense. Okay, so now you got to put all 98 together in some sort of order to get a sentence and a paragraph, right? So the Lost Book of Enoch, which is what they think has the rest of this in it, that is mentioned in Jude 14. So they talk about Enoch having 3 books, right? But we've only found 2. So in March of 1583, Kelly gets the vision of a book of magic, and that's what he wants, right? But then he says the elementals are interfering with his visions. Elementals are spirits from nature.
Right.
Okay, so they're not human spirits,
Yeah.
you know, they're not ghosts, they're not angels or demons, they're spirits from nature. So then I was thinking, years ago when I wrote my first book, there was something I came across in the book of Thomas, that Jesus said to Thomas, remember when Jesus rose, doubting Thomas, he wouldn't believe that that was Jesus, and that's when Jesus said to feel my side where he had been stabbed. He whispers into Thomas's ear, the fate of the universe depends on 3 words. Calico, Saliso, Zizar. I have asked a dozen priests, pastors, what does that mean? Their answer is, that's in the book of Thomas, that's not part of the Bible, we don't accept those books because we don't really know who wrote it. I said, okay, what does it mean? We don't know, it's not in a language. So I said, it's in this language, it's in Enochian, that's what it is.
Mhm.
So I go back and here you have translations, right?
Mhm.
You have translations. I go back and I try to look the words up. And I said, I'm going to figure out what these three words. It doesn't match up. It doesn't match up. So either maybe I'm writing it in English here, Calico, Saliso, Zizar, and I'm not, I don't know, but I thought I discovered something. I thought I was going to figure out what this means, and nobody's been able to figure it out.
So that's where doubting Thomas come from, then?
Yeah, when he wouldn't believe that Jesus arose after 3 days, that's where the term doubting Thomas
Yeah,
is.
really?
Yeah, that's where it came from.
That's
Was
something new I
Thomas,
learned.
yeah, and that's when Jesus proved to him that that is him, and he had the wounds and everything else, right? But he said that to him about those three words.
Yeah.
The fate of the universe depends on these three words.
But maybe you're spelling them wrong.
Well, that's the other thing too. I have tried to look up the correct spelling on this, and you don't really get out there. I've seen it spelled a few different ways too. So who knows? Who knows what it means, right? So Raphael now is explaining through Kelly to D what all of these letters mean. D has to write them down, and I guess it takes a long time. He has to draw each one of those boxes
Yeah.
and symbols,
Yeah.
and then they'll say the word, and he says, what does that mean? So what he writes is A-M-U-F, so what it sounded like,
Yeah.
he's writing that down also. Because the language don't make any sense to him. He's not going to know what does that mean? Well, that's a moof. Well, how does a U mean a moof? Yeah, so he writes out a moof, right? So, so then D says to Kelly, ask the angel for an abridged version, because they're spending it took them years to write this, right? When he asked for an abridged version of this, an easier way to do it, the table and the chair go flying against the wall. Now, where does that happen? Poltergeist activity, demonic activity,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then there's no communication for a week. They can't contact the spirit, the angel, so they say. And then all of a sudden they're able to contact him again after a week had left, and he comes back. Kelly falls into a trance every time now, and he's speaking the language fluently. He's speaking it fluently, right? And D is writing this stuff down. He's told not to use these pronunciations, but D is doing it anyhow. He's writing the pronunciation out so he can remember what it means, right? D and Kelly then start arguing as to whether they're speaking to angels or demons. I think they're speaking to demons on this. I don't think these are angels telling them to use a hexagram, right? So Kelly then is starting to ask the angels for information on, lost treasures, buried treasures, and alchemy. He wants to know the secrets of how to turn, tin or copper into gold. That's what he did, right? So he's starting to ask about that stuff. In 1583, Kelly's told that the Spanish Armada is going to attack in 1588, but it'll fail. And it's exactly what happened. Right? So he knew that 5 years in advance, he said that. And then in 4 years, he said, Mary Queen of Scots will be beheaded in 1587, 4 years from now. And that is what happened. Okay, so they're given real knowledge of the future, things that are going to happen. Then what happens is Kelly sees a girl, a 9-year-old girl called Madimi. So when he calls upon the spirits, it's no longer Raphael, Uriel talking to him, it's this 9-year-old girl. Who's a 9-year-old girl? Is it a demon? Is it a ghost? He's getting his information from a spirit of a 9-year-old girl. Her name is Madimi, right? So what they do at that point is, through her, they had 98 squares. They develop a whole new language, probably this, with 49 of these boxes, and it makes more sense now. So that they kind of reworked the language. She did it for them, and it's 49 squares. It resembles a language that makes more sense, and it was generated out of the first language of those 98 boxes, right? Only thing is, the words are even now harder to pronounce. So on the bottom here, you could see it on the slide. You look at the words. The first one, O-O-A-O-N-A. Oa-ona? I don't know what that means, you know. Is that like Polynesian? Mua, M-O-O-A-H. S-M-N-A-D. Snad? Nance? Paomba? Those are the words. So it's like, we don't understand what this means now. That's the problem, right? If you don't have the cipher in the code. So then they go into the number system. The number 1 is an L, the number 2 is a V, 3 is a D, 4 is an S. But when you get to 10, none of the numbers above 10 make any sense. So if 1 is an L and 2 is a V, 12 should be LV, right? That's what a 12 should be. 1, 2 should be LV. Well, it's not, it's OS. So if you look, I put them here, some of them examples. 22 is OP, but a 2 is a V. You should have VV, it means 22. Nope, it's OP. So the thing makes no sense, right?
No.
And there's only 21 letters, there's not 24.
No.
So like C and K uses 1 letter, I and Y uses 1 letter, U and V uses 1 letter, so there's 24 letters. Then the spirits warn D in Greek. Kelly doesn't speak Greek, D does. So Kelly now starts speaking Greek and they're warning D, Kelly is going to leave, he's going to betray him, he's going to leave, right? He's just going to take off because he's trying to get information on alchemy and buried treasure, right? But Kelly doesn't know he said that because he's speaking in Greek, right? So, so then like D, he wants proof that what's being told is real. They tell him, describe every book on his bookshelf, right? They tell him what each book on the bookshelf says. They tell him, you have a hidden manuscript hidden up your chimney fireplace, and he did, right? And they said, you used other mediums before Kelly, and he did. So he now believes everything they're saying because everything that it just said was true, right? So now it's 1587, right? And they already warned D about Kelly. Kelly says, the angels have commanded us to swap wives in May of 1587. Kelly and his wife are 30 years older than D and his wife. And D's wife is probably a 17-year-old. She's young and she's very attractive. D says, well, if the angels are saying we must do this, we must do it. For 3 months, Kelly made this up. He totally made it up. He wanted Dee's wife. So for 3 months, they wife swapped. That's exactly what happened. And then in August of 1587, that was May, in August, the whole thing fell apart. You know, I guess Dee caught on what was going on, but he played him like a fiddle. You know, Kelly was a con man, and he played him like a fiddle. And there's even a lot of people that said all of this stuff from Kelly was made up. Kelly had a lot of knowledge of those older books and manuscripts, and he played Dee, because Dee was paying him to come over, like a cameraman coming over, right? So Dee was paying him to come over, and he wasn't paying him a lot, so he took after me with you. So,
No
so
comments.
there's doubts as to whether anything that Kelly said was the truth, right? But he got him to wife swap with them, right? So, and then right after that, the spirits stopped communicating and they disbanded in August of 1587. So this went on for 7 years. The wife swapping was just 3 months. Kelly dies at age 40
Well, in prison.
in prison, right?
I could see why.
And in this communication, Kelly at one point said, well, Archangel Uriel said I would live to 87 and you, John D., would live to 122. D dies at 81, okay? So,
How did Kelly die, did it say?
he died in prison. He
What's
just
that
died in
about?
prison, probably starvation, who knows, whatever. And D dies at 81 years old and he was broke, in poverty. So, D never published this, the Enochian system. What happened was, years later, John Cotton buys his house, his property, and he finds all this manuscript. So he starts going through it, And that's when it gets published, but it's almost 100 years later, 90 years later, right? And then Aleister Crowley gets involved, and that's what I said right in the beginning. Aleister Crowley joins the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in 1898. They were formed in 1888.
Mm.
He goes through all of this and perfects it as Enochian magic. And he writes the book, The Equinox, in 1909. So that's why I say I stay away from, like, I'm curious, I want to know about Aleister Crowley, and he conjured up Lamb, which was the gray and all of that. So, but I don't want to know anything about this guy. I don't want anything to do with black magic, So then people start saying there has to be a message in this. If you have a cipher, you could figure out what all of this means. What does this all, there has to be a hidden message in here. Like when you look at those books by Dan Brown, right, the Da Vinci Code and National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. If you had that cipher, you could figure out what everything meant, right? So they said there's got to be a hidden message somewhere, or in that third book of Enoch is where you figure it all out, right? So get this, Fred, now. There's a guy, it's 100 years later, pretty much. It's 1671. His name is Elias Ashmole. How'd you like that, the last name, Ashmole? You move a couple of letters around. Elias Ashmole, right? So they must have made fun of him in school, right? So he gets all of this stuff, right? So for 5 years, from 1671 to 76, he tries to contact the same angels and work through this. There's no response. He's not able to conjure up any of that. And it's basically, that's 1676, it's forgotten about for almost 200 years, until 1900, let's say, when the occult Golden Dawn gets a hold of this and says, well, it's the same language demons speak, so let's use it to contact demons and get spells and conjuring and all of that, and that's what happens, right? There's another guy, Wynne Westcott. He takes the language, he blends it with the Egyptian gods and India four-handed chess. I don't know what four-handed chess is. He creates a new game of Rosicrucian chess using all of this, their language, the pieces are Egyptian gods, etc. So that's another thing that was done. Anton LaVey, The Church of Satan.
I was just reading about him today.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
He uses the Enochian calls. In the back of the book, there's calls which are almost like passages, like you say your prayers. It's an Enochian call. It's a I don't call it a prayer. It's whatever they're asking, and a lot of times they're calling upon demons, right? So in 1930, he writes the Satanic Bible. And it was funny, have you seen in the news how the Church of Satan and them are allowed now to do all the religious ceremonies that Christians do? Yeah. They say we are a religion and you have to allow them to do their same things in public.
He didn't write that in 1930, did
he? Yeah, 1930.
He didn't come to power until 1960 something.
Anton LaVey?
That's when he started
the Church of Satan.
Yeah, in 65
but
it
said that he used this stuff and he wrote his Bible in 1930. So maybe he didn't come into power until 55
I was reading about
something.
Jane Mansfield.
Yeah.
When he put the spell on her husband, Brody or whatever, and then he happened to be looking at the piece of paper he had with Jane Mansfield, and he had cut scissors around her neck, and that's when she was beheaded.
Yeah.
So actually the spell went to her instead of him.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I shy away from that stuff when you get into, because I don't want to know anything about the occult. I really don't.
And another thing about Anton LaVey, a lot of people don't know, the Hotel California, the song. Yeah. If you look at the album Hotel California, that's Anton LaVey standing on top in the black robe. Yeah. He was good friends with the Beach Boys. Yeah. So.
Well, they're all connected. These Hollywood people.
Oh yeah.
When you look into this stuff,
they eat kids and drink their blood.
It's exactly. They are all tied in with all of this stuff that goes on. Have some more beer. Yeah, some more black cherry Coke. black cherry. It's not Coke. Okay. Lovecraft. We've all heard of him. Yeah. H.P. Lovecraft. He starts looking into this, and he traces Enochian back to Sumerian and Akkadian demons in his book Necronomicon. Right. Okay, so these are some pictures from his book, which is some creepy stuff, right? But you see that in some of these horror movies that I watch. So what they know is that Enochian magic works.
Mhm.
What Crowley does and others,
Right.
the magic works. But the question is, would angels contact D with such a confusing, inconsistent language that made no sense, right? Would they have something more important to tell D? So if you contacted Gabriel or Michael,
Mm.
wouldn't they have like something really important to tell you? Is this what they would tell you? You
But
know,
again, they
they're-
might want you to figure it out, I mean,
or maybe that's only what
Yeah.
all they asked about.
Yeah.
You know, that's what they asked, so that's what they were told, right? But would they have told them to use a hexagon table, like a Ouija board?
Well, but again, your hexagon, if you look at it, your 5-pointed star, the 2 prongs up is Satan, the other point up is white magic. So they could have been talking about white magic the way they were saying
Who
it.
knows? But would angels be telling him to use a hexagram? You know. So and then would they use crystals and a black mirror made of the same substance as the black stone of Mecca, or were these guys tricked by demons? We know that Kelly was. He was a shyster, and he totally tricked Dee into wife swapping, you know. So, you know, it's an interesting story. Anything you want to say about that? Because what I wanted to do is I read this, I want to go talk about a couple of UFO cases now that falls right in line with this. Anything else you want to say about this? Obviously they had a language, right?
Yeah.
Adam, and you know, Enoch, whatever, there is a
Well, they
language
talk,
there.
I mean, you know, and then, like I say, you know, you got Adam, and you got Lilith, or whatever her name is,
Lilith.
and then you got Eve, then you got the snake, the one with the apple, they all talk, so they had to have a language.
Right, they had to have a language.
And then when
And
she
people
went-
think the serpent is Satan, but it's not. It was, from my reading, it was one of his, you know, his demons called Gadriel. Gadriel, it wasn't Satan himself that went as the snake, it was Gadriel.
Well, still, there was a demon.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
I
one
don't
of
know how you look at
it was
it.
one of his fallen.
A reptilian.
that went. Yeah. So, I mean, it was interesting. I wanted to, I always heard about this, you know, Enochian, Enoch, the language. John Dee was really the reason I looked it up, because I'd heard the name. I said, who's John Dee, you know? So I decided to look it up, so.
But back to Enoch, okay, so, was he taken up before, okay, he was taken up in the sky, right? They say he was taken up in a UFO, okay, whatever.
That's the ancient alien version. There was a UFO that took him.
But
He
then
didn't go to
again,
heaven.
so was the other one, which one was taken up first?
Ezekiel?
Yeah.
I think it was Enoch was first, because Enoch is the great-grandfather of Noah. So Enoch is in, I don't know what that is, the third or fourth, fifth generation of people.
But
right?
see, there had to be a lot of other people at that time, so they
I
all had
agree
a,
with you.
you know what I'm saying? I mean, it wasn't.
I agree.
You know,
But
they probably had dances down
Remember
there, you
when
know?
we did the Lilith episode? They talked about Eve and Lilith able to have 9 kids at once,
Yeah,
or 12 kids at
Yeah.
once. They didn't have to go 9 months.
yeah.
So they could have been popping out a dozen kids every 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, but it doesn't. I have a chart upstairs, a poster. It's about this big,
Yeah.
that names, and you use the Bible. It names everyone from Adam forward. It goes in a kind of a circle
Yeah.
like this, and it names every single person over the last 6,000 years, your family lines and stuff, you know. But I'm looking at this, Fred, and a couple of UFO cases popped to mind, because there were a couple of these abduction cases that I said, these are not abductions. This is a demonic infestation. It is not an abduction. So I'm going to show that to you. I put it in my book, The Keys for UFOs. It's also in the String Theory of the Unexplained book that I wrote, right? So, Betty Andresian, right? 1967. It's a, you know, back then it was a famous name. Maybe people don't know about her now. But Ray Fowler, I used to have his books. I put them in our raffle basket for the conferences. He wrote 5 books on this. Ray Fowler, The Andresian Affair, right? It's a documentation of her alien abduction, right? Aboard a UFO. This is what she says. She sees the burning death and rebirth of a phoenix, right? She's told you'll meet the son of the one. She's thinking, oh, I'm going to meet the son of Jesus. Well, who's the son of Jesus? He didn't have any kids, right? They're not talking about Jesus and God here, right? So then she sees these headless creatures, almost like like this, like plants,
Mm.
growing an eye, a red eye. It's a red eye is what she described. And what it is, it's for the grays. The grays can't take the light. That's why their eyes are so big, and their eyes actually like burn up or they don't last long. So they grow eyes for the grays. And she thinks she's having a religious experience. That's what she's thinking this whole time, right? So then at night her bed and her windows are shaking, right? There's creaking sounds. There's claw marks across the floor, right? And scraping. I had that here. My dog, there was on the tile there was the sound of nails and stuff. I'm telling you, my dog was like looking at it. I was in the office. I heard it. He heard it. He's looking on the ground like this, like, what is that? And you can't see anything. Same thing in the hallway there. We were upstairs. I was getting ready to go to bed. You start hearing the nails and stuff walking across the floor. And he's standing at the banister up there. He's looking, and his head's going like this. I've had most of this stuff I've had happen, but I recognize it as being.
Who lived here before you did?
She was a gynecologist. She had one kid. When they moved and I bought the house, like I said, there's 23 rooms, 5 bedrooms. It was her and one kid. And her reason for moving, I never talked to her. I talked to her friend came over to show me where the water valves are. And I said, why is she moving? And he said, she wants a ranch home. She don't want to go up and down stairs. There's a woman in her 40s. She don't want to go up and down stairs. So I think the haunted activity was here. Because you hear it at night. You hear it at night. You hear it at night. The first day I moved in, I heard it here. And the first day we moved in New Jersey, we heard it there too. So I don't know if I just got unlucky and bought 2 haunted houses. You know, Jersey was worse. Well, I won't say it's worse. It was worse, but this escalated here. But, so she hears all of this stuff. She still thinks she's in contact with religious figures, right? Now, she's taught hieroglyphic writing and tones. She sees all those symbols like in here, the Enochian. She's told to repeat it. This is why I don't want to read this stuff and say it in my head. It is that who knows what she's saying? She is saying incantations and they won't tell her what it means. So when she's taken by these grays, right, they show her and say, repeat this, repeat this. Who knows what bargain she made in this foreign language? Did she give her kids to the devil? Did she give her grandkids? You know, who knows what was said?
Well, her 2 sons died.
That's exactly what happened. Then, in front of people, she's speaking in tongues, in a foreign language, and 2 different voices are coming out of her. Let's say a male and a female, at the same time. And she thinks she's having a religious experience here. I mean, this is incredible, right? Then she's told on one of these abductions that her 2 sons would die. They did. They got killed in a car accident. Just like with Dee, and they knew Mary Queen of Scots, they were told, right? She was told, you're going to lose your 2 sons. She lost them, right? But who knows what she said in their language? She might have given her kids to the devil, right? So, and then I looked her up a couple of years ago, because this slide is actually from one of my other presentations. Her and her daughter are into everything paranormal. And she is referred to as one of the few devout Christians that were abducted by aliens, right? Because normal Christians are going to call upon Jesus, save me, help me, and the gray leaves, right? The alien leaves, the demonic leaves. She's always referred to as one of the few devout Christians that were abducted.
But that really, that what you're saying now, you know, you call upon Jesus Christ, really half of that stuff never took place till what's his name started that stuff down in Florida.
Yeah, Joe Jordan.
Yeah, and you never heard back in the 60s and 70s, actually in the early 80s, anybody say that.
Well, they were probably doing it, but
Well,
nobody put it together.
Well,
Joe
you
was
know,
the first one who put it together.
Yeah, I mean, were they doing it? We have no idea.
No,
what
I
they were
think
doing
if you scare somebody with something like that, they would call upon God. They'd call upon Jesus. The Christians would absolutely do that. So, and then what do you think happens, Fred? 2 years ago, maybe it was last year or 2 years ago, Betty Andreessen's daughter dies also. So they have a group online called Paranormal Girls, right? They're into everything paranormal, and her daughter dies. She lost all 3 of her kids. So she gets into the paranormal, having been a devout Christian.
Yeah.
And the stuff I described, the whole hieroglyphic stuff, that was the same Enochian stuff, language, is what's going on. So then, that's 1967. 1988, Dr. Carla Turner.
Mm-hmm.
She writes 3 books.
Yep.
Her last book is Masquerade of Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I read all 3, I remember the line in there that she goes, if you think these things are aliens or you think they're angels, think again.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. They're malevolent is what it
Right,
is.
right.
But she's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
She must have been an atheist, right? She never called upon God. She never put together that she was dealing with demons and not aliens. You know, or maybe at the end she did when she wrote this book, because it's a masquerade. They're not angels. They're not here to help us. And that's a line that Jacques Vallée has used too, right? It's a masquerade of angels, but that was her book that she used.
She was kind of hard on him. I mean, she came down kind of hard on him.
On who? Jacques Vallée?
No, on the aliens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, because what was happening to her. So get this, Fred. They get up in the morning. They go to breakfast downstairs. She makes
Yeah.
breakfast. Her son, her husband, and her sit down. Oh, this is the dream I had. I had the same dream. I had the same dream. They describe it. The whole family had the same dream.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have the same dream. Nobody has the same dream unless all 3 of you were there. You were actually there. It's an experience. It's not a dream. They start describing shared dreams. She describes greys and reptilians. She's abducted sometimes by greys, sometimes by reptilians, and she meets the old one.
Who's the old one?
I think it's Lucifer's who the old one is, you know. And with Betty Andreessen, she thought it was God or Jesus she was meeting when they said the one, right? There's only one of each of them, you know. So now get this: 3 in the morning, her bed starts shaking. Think of the Exorcist, Poltergeist movies, right? Bed shaking. There's knocking sounds again, right? Toys start moving like the Poltergeist, like the movie. The thing turns on the truck and it starts moving across the floor, right? The TV and the radio turn on by themselves, right? This is stuff that's going on, and she thinks this is an alien abduction. I think even in Whitley Strieber's Communion, wasn't that stuff happening downstairs in the house, right? So she thinks it's an alien thing, right?
But 3 o'clock is an important thing here too.
That's the devil's hour, 3 to 4. Because Jesus was crucified at 3 in the afternoon, so 3 in the morning, the opposite becomes Lucifer's hour, right? Then they all see a crawling black mass. I've seen that here, and not only me. My sister saw it, my girlfriend saw it in New Jersey, my sister, my girlfriend, and I saw it in New Jersey. I saw it here, I think I was alone. It's a rolling cloud of black mass rolling across the ceiling. But in her case, it had these finger tendrils coming out of it, you know, like you see with Slender Man and some of that stuff, you know. The son, he's with his girlfriend, they're someplace, and she's standing under a street light. He's in the dark area, and he keeps telling her, you got to come here into the dark. There's somebody I want you to meet. He goes and like grabs her and tries to pull her out of the street light and pull her into the dark. She like freaks out and runs. What was he, was he pulling her to be abducted, or was that something else that was going on, you know?
We don't know.
You don't know, right? So again, she's shown an unknown language and symbols in Enochian. But you don't know what you're reading, what you're saying. They won't tell you what it means, right? So the whole family, they start having personality changes, like the son trying to kidnap his girlfriend, right? They hear voices. There are triangular wounds taken out of their skin, like not scoops, but actually triangles.
Yeah.
The skin in the form of a triangle was taken out.
Well, you still have that happen now.
Yeah. She's warned that the grays, there are some grays that are good, and then the taller grays are more malevolent, right? She never calls upon God, because she didn't believe in God. She was an atheist, right? But all of this stuff going on, and she then, I think she's like 46, 48, she dies of cancer. And I tell you, Fred, I think people that get entwined in this, they die early. From what I've seen, cancers, other things, suicides, I think it's very depressing to be in their presence and that type of stuff. That a lot of these people die early, right? So then we got Whitley Strieber. So he writes his book Communion, right? And I think that was in the 80s, right? So he thought this is an extraterrestrial. That's the first drawing. And when the book was on the bookshelves, people saw that alien, gray, and that, I've seen that. He had a big reaction to the cover of the book. The people were saying, I've seen that with the big eyes and the bulbous head, right? So he thought he was dealing with ET, right? He soon came to realize, and you've said this, they were after his soul, right? You've said that a number of times, that they're after the soul.
Yeah, I think they are, yeah.
I believe what happened here in the Christmas of 15, when I was shrouded in this darkness and stuff, and I called upon God, and I could see the veil of darkness rise, I think they were there to take my soul. That is what I think they were there for, you know? So, then...
Well, real quick though. You know now, Pilates is into the UFO thing.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And hits what he's saying, that they're here to take the soul.
He's a good marketer.
Well, I'm
You know?
gonna tell you what, I mean, he could be right.
Yeah, but we said that way before
Yeah, well,
he did.
I think he knew it, but he never said it. He was
Well-
afraid because of his publicity.
Yeah, but I always got the impression he was talking about Bigfoot abductions over the years, but he never would say it.
Well, I think Bigfoot's involved in it somehow.
Yeah.
Bigfoot's an alien.
But now he's gone on that these are alien abductions because the Pentagon has come out and said it, you know, that UFOs are real, but they won't say the alien is real, right? Didn't you say over the weekend they said there's no aliens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He, he had the play, the 10-minute thing of his movie. So I put on there, you go, guy. I told you this many years ago, didn't I? I said, keep it going. Next thing I know, he's friends with me again. His picture's on my friend page.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we said this, we've been saying this since
Oh,
2014.
Yeah, I remember the lady said that
Yeah.
the alien was coming to get her and she died.
Yeah, you were the one who said to me, look at the alien abduction, it don't make sense. And that's when when I looked at it, was when I just completed the 2 years on Hangar 1. You said that to me in 14. I started looking at the abduction and all this really bad paranormal activity started, you know? So they were watching me, and when I noticed them, it became even worse. So in a 1990 interview, Whitley Strieber admits that he was a practicing witch and an occult follower. And, you know, he gets the publicity off the UFO stuff, but that's not who this guy is, right? He said, I made choices a long time ago that brought me this experience. So he's not dealing with aliens either on this. So in my mind, that's 3 examples of this language and stuff and the grays and witchcraft and the occult, that you're not dealing with aliens. You're dealing with a demonic infestation.
Well, but again, okay, like we say Mars. Who lived on Mars?
I don't know if anybody does anymore.
Huh? Are they demonic?
Satan said he went to Venus. He said when the Watchers mated with the women.
Don't say that. No, don't say that. That's the cosmos. But what I'm saying is, we're dealing with things that we don't know what the hell it is.
You're gonna make me drink this.
I mean, we don't know what they are.
No, we don't know. We don't know very little.
You know, maybe they were all cast out. You know, we have no idea. I mean, we're dealing with something like I got a case where the guy said he woke up, there was a reptilian standing over him. He'll look down and whisper in my ear, in his ear, Daddy. Now, did he have sex with a damn reptilian? He didn't know nothing about it? I mean, come on. We don't know what's going on out there. We have no idea.
No, we don't. I'll tell you something interesting happened when I put these presentations together. And, you know, like I reached out to you guys a couple of weeks ago, and it's a good thing we didn't do the show then.
No.
Every single time I put this together, I then, about a week or so, 10 days later, I come across more information.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. They give it to you.
Well, I'm getting it
They're
from
playing
somewhere,
you.
right?
They're playing you.
So I put this together, what we just saw, and then I come across something else that talks about other strange manuscripts and books. And with the other presentation we did on Velikovsky, I thought I was done. Nope, I came across the stuff on Solomon and other things that I added to it. So it's almost like when I put one of these together, don't jump on it right away.
Yeah.
You're going to get some more, and it's either I'm tuned into it and then I come across it on the internet or on my phone and I say, look, that's exactly what I need to read next.
Yeah.
And then I add to it. But there's a lot of other strange books out there like Enochian, right? So here's one called the Codex Gigas, which means the Devil's Bible. Look at the size of this thing. It's 3 feet by 20 inches. It weighs 165 pounds. It was discovered in the Czech Republic in 2022. No, it was written in the Czech Republic in 1222 by a monk.
I seen that the other day somewhere.
Did you?
I don't remember, you're saying that now, I remember the 3 feet, where the hell did I
You
see
probably
that?
saw it on some post on Facebook or something, somebody had it on there. But this monk called Herman the Recluse, he writes this in one night. What happened was he broke his vows, probably of celibacy or something, right? So they were going to wall him up. They're going to put him in the wall and wall him up and kill him, right? So he goes, I will write you a book with all the knowledge of the universe. I'll do it in one night. He wrote this book. Look at the size of that thing. He did it in one night. But he said afterwards, when they didn't kill him, he said, the devil helped me write it. In one night he wrote that whole book. People looked at it, at the pictures, the drawings, all the writing, and they said this would have taken 20 years for somebody to write a book that big with all those pages. 20 years to write it. So that's another one that this monk wrote in, that's 800 years ago, right? 1222. You have the book of Enoch, which we talked about, right?
Yeah.
He's the great-grandfather of Noah, right? Some people said it was his 3 books were lost in the flood, but we only have 2, right? But we also know that one was written in 300 BC and one was written in 100 BC. So I don't know how, back then Enoch didn't die. He went to heaven. So he couldn't have written the 2nd book or the 3rd book, right?
Could have come back down.
I guess. And they have the full text of this, the book of Enoch, is in Ethiopia. And do you know, it's funny, years ago, I didn't know Ethiopia is a Christian nation, And that's where they claimed for years with the whole Dan Brown Da Vinci Code, that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia. They got a thing that it's like a big vault or something, a structure carved out of, they basically took a rock area, carved it out, carved a moat around it. So, I guess if you laid a ladder down, you could walk over to it or something. They claim in there is the Ark of the Covenant, and they have the books of Enoch in there. Enoch, was taken to heaven. He was shown, and what he describes is he's in space looking down at Earth, right? Like Ezekiel, I guess, and he sees the stars, but he sees it all from above. And that this is where the whole story of the watches, mating with the women, right, and the Nephilim, it comes from the book of Enoch, right? So he said he actually was there and observed all of that taking place, and he also never died. He was taken to heaven, and I think at like 364 years old, he went to heaven. So he's the only other human that never died, He might be the only one that never died, right? Because Jesus died, right? Who else disappeared? So you got another book here, the Ronk Codex from 1532. This was found in Hungary. Nobody knows who the author is. It's 448 pages. It's got 87 illustrations, an unknown language. The symbols are written in reverse from right to left. But then again, Da Vinci would write that way too. He wrote backwards. Like you had to use a mirror, or he placed the mirror and he wrote. He wrote backwards, right? And they say when you turn it upside down, it looks like Sumerian writing. So it's not only written backwards, it's written upside down. The Voynich manuscript in Italy in 1410, it was discovered in 1912 in Lithuania. It's 240 pages. Again, an unknown language, written left to, this is left to right, so that's the correct side. And it has all these fictitious plants in there. It shows plants that don't exist, like this. And then on the bottom, I put the writing. Very similar to the Enochian writing. The symbols and what they mean, very similar to Enochian writing. So that's another one.
Mm.
You got this Codex Seraphinian, and it's so hard to say. This was made in 1981 in Italy. But this is not really a big mysterious thing. It's 360 pages. It's just some guy created this imaginary world. It's similar to that Voynich manuscript. It's in an unknown language, and it uses surrealism, like, oh, what's the guy? I got all his pictures over here. You know, it's all surrealism is what it is. Like if you look at the cover, you see this man and the woman laying on top of each other, and as it goes on, they turn into an alligator. You know, and you got all these people with crazy heads and no legs. You got a horse with no back legs. It has wheels. You know, but I went online to buy this. You know, it's out there for. You found a couple of them for like $300-400. Some are $8,000.
Really?
Yeah, it's. I guess it's hard to get, and you know, those are probably original copies, and they're not reproduced ones. You know. But it's 11 chapters, and that's that. But I think this is just a guy creating something is what it is, you know. I don't think there's anything mysterious to it. You have the Kybalion from 1908. This is Egyptian and Greek occult. They say that the universe is mental, okay? It's alive, but it's all mental, the universe. There's consequences to everything, right? Everything you do, there's a consequence, good, bad. There's a rhythm and a flow to everything, that you do this, like the butterfly effect, it affects that, and that everything has an opposite. You got the Ripley Scroll from 1624. This is, there's only one copy of this, and it's in the Manchester, the UK, in Manchester, right? It describes alchemy. It's 18 feet long. And it tells you how to make the philosopher's stone for alchemy. You got the St. Barnabas Bible, and St. Barnabas is a big name in Christianity. I mean, there's churches called St. Barnabas, right? Aren't there some charities, St. Barnabas charity and stuff like that? But the St. Barnabas Bible was discovered in 500 AD, okay? It's in Turkey. It's valued right now at $28 million. It's black pages written in gold. You can see the gold writing on it. People don't know if it's real, it's a fake or not of St. Barnabas. Barnabas was a mentor to Paul. And Paul is the guy who wrote the New Testament. Most everything in the New Testament is from Paul, right? So Barnabas is like his mentor, but Barnabas went kind of rogue for a while. Barnabas said, Paul is an imposter. You know, he's not a Christian. He's not what he's saying he is. He said Mark in the Bible, you know, I mean, Barnabas walked with these people. He said Mark was totally useless, right? But one of the Gospels is the Gospel of Mark, right? But Barnabas did a lot to grow the church. A lot of what he says is you find in the Muslim views of the Quran, but this was written before the Quran, 160 years before the Quran, right? He says Judas was the one that was crucified. Not Jesus. Judas was crucified. And he said that Jesus did ascend to heaven, but he was only a prophet. And that's the stuff that it says in the Quran, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Muhammad may have gotten some of his thoughts from the St. Barnabas Bible. The Vatican requested to study it and to see it, but Turkey won't give it to them. They won't allow them to look at it, so we don't really know. And you don't know that the Vatican is going to tell you the truth. So before I move on to the last slide, what are your thoughts on this whole languages and some of these ancient books and
I believe they're there. I believe that there's a lot of stuff out there we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe, like right now, we probably have shit in here watching everything we're doing, saying, look at these guys. I mean, we can't see them, but they can see us.
I think the spirit world's all around us.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're watching us right now. I mean,
I don't think it's one-to-one, Fred. I don't think that everyone has an angel and a demon with them at all times. But I think there are times that I know that there's something in the house.
yeah.
I hear it, You know, the knocking sounds,
Yeah.
the movement, you know, I know, and then right now, there's nothing in the house.
I could feel something watching me.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
it's like, you know, they say, okay, recently I've been going down to the park down here where I live. And again, you know, Bigfoot, they say like Bigfoot, you can feel him watching you. Every time I go down there, I get the feeling it's something watching me. I mean, I can feel it. I mean, you know I can't see nothing, but
Yeah.
there's something there.
Yeah. Well, all right, so that's the talk about, and like I said, I stay away from the occult. I don't want to know anything about Aleister Crowley. I don't want to read this stuff. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to do any of that.
I think you can stay away from it, but I think you should have knowledge of it.
Right.
I mean, you know, like I got a couple books on, it's a cult. I don't practice it. I look at it, but I don't practice it. I know now if somebody does something, I know what they're doing.
I got rid of all of those books. I used to, as a kid, I bought books. It's funny, I never read them. The Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, all that. I had them in my bookcase. I never looked at them. I bought them as a teenager, never read them, you know. But when all of that stuff was going on in the house, I took them all and I put them in the raffle basket at the conferences. Those were all those books I was getting rid of. Anything that was of the occult that I had was gone, you know.
But
Even though I never even read the books.
But I think it's good if you look at them, you may be able to try to understand something
Right.
that's happening.
So let me tell you something that happened. I went to Lake Tahoe, I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, 5, 6 weeks ago. So I'm in Lake Tahoe, and I didn't know, remember the movie The Ponderosa with Haas Cartwright and all of that,
Yeah.
right? The Cartwrights? That was there. That was actually set in Lake Tahoe and Reno, Nevada. Virginia City? I always thought it was set in Virginia. I didn't realize it was Virginia City, Nevada. So I go to Lake Tahoe, and I go to Virginia City, because I found out all about the Ponderosa and the TV show, right? So I go there, and of course there's a ghost tour. So I always do the ghost tours, right? So I go there, and this guy is there, Justin Seagraves, right? So I'm talking to him, and he said, I told him I was on the Hangar One show, I did some TV. He goes, oh, he says he was in the first episode of Ghost Adventures, the show that's on right now.
Yeah.
And he said the first episode was filmed here at the Washoe Club in 2021, when the show, I guess they filmed it there. That's in Virginia City, Nevada, at the Washoe Club. He goes, let me show you a picture. So, because I said I was doing the UFO stuff, right? So he takes his phone, and I had him send it to me, right? He goes, I took this picture, and you see, and he zoomed in, right? We're in the building, and like over there. It was maybe a good 70 feet away. He said, I took a picture in that doorway, and I see somebody standing in the doorway. But there's nobody actually standing in the doorway. He sees it, right? When he zoomed in, he goes, look at this. There's a gray. See the eyes?
Mm-hmm.
The head? No arms. There's a gray standing in
Right.
front of this kid.
Yeah.
He zoomed in, and he said, look, I got a gray. What do you think about that?
That's true.
I mean,
I tell you something happened to me the other day. Again, I'm down a park. So I'm sitting there, and I'm giving out a couple whelps. I'm going, whoo, whoo. Next thing I know, within 30 seconds, a goddamn crow came down. Sat on a tree. Ah, ah, ah. So I look at the crow, I go, ah, ah, ah. We did this for 3 minutes, me and the crow talking to each other. I mean, what was that?
let me tell you something about crows. I never used to get crows in the yard. In the summer now,
Yeah.
I got at least 20 in the trees here.
Yeah.
I read something on crows. Crows have facial recognition.
Yeah.
They will know you for life.
Yeah.
If you were communicating with them, they recognize you. They recognize me. I'm telling you, when I go in the yard to pick up sticks and twigs and stuff to get rid of, they all start there cackling,
Yeah.
right? They all fly away from me. I mean, I'm talking about 20 of them. They hang in these trees here.
Yeah.
But I saw something on one of those video shows, famous, funniest, not funniest, but this guy, he had a stick. He was in India, and a crow kind of came down. Whack! He hit it. He hit the crow with the stick, right? They said like a week or so later, the crows were attacking him. They only him. Other people walking on the street. This guy goes out and he walks with his stick now because he's got to go like this. The crows are swooping down to get him. They recognized him, even though he's got a different colored shirt and stuff. They have facial recognition.
Yeah.
You mess with a crow,
Yeah.
they know
I'll
you.
tell you what, this crow was, I mean, he was just calling away, man. I mean, like, I'm saying, like, what? the
Aren't
hell?
crows like, I don't know if in a lot of the pagan stuff, are crows used in witchcraft or any
No,
of that? I
no.
don't know. But there's something to crows. I didn't look it up. But so, all right, Fred, that's our show. We're up to 110 episodes now. Even though every time we do it, I say, that's it. I can't think of anything else. You know, that was 20 episodes ago, and I said, we're done. I'm not doing it anymore. And I'll come across another book. I just got the Book of Solomon's coming, so maybe we'll do it. I don't know. But that's our show. Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.